All right, let's jump right into it. Today's deep dive is focused on a topic that I know a lot of you are interested in, the top 10 thieves in history.
Yeah, this list you sent us, it's quite a fascinating mix, really.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've got jewel thieves, we've got masterminds who vanished without a trace, we've got folks who, well, let's just say they were very creative in their approach.
I think what strikes me is the variety of skills involved. It's not all just about cracking safes or picking
You're
pockets.
right. Some of these individuals relied on charm, some on meticulous planning, and some, well, just sheer audacity.
Definitely. And their stories offer a glimpse into, different historical periods, how security has evolved over time.
Exactly. And while we're going to be digging into what made them so successful, we have to remember, they were criminals.
Of course, their actions had consequences.
But for now, let's put that aside and really just focus on what made them so good at what they did.
Sounds good to me. Let's start with someone who really challenged the stereotype of who we think of as a thief, Doris Payne.
Okay, Doris Payne. Now this woman, she was a legend. Decades-long career targeting high-end jewelry stores. I mean, talk about living the glamorous life.
Well, she wasn't about brute force or anything like that. It was really all about her charm.
Oh, absolutely. She understood human nature, played on people's expectations. You wouldn't suspect a thing.
And that's how she got away with it for so long. I mean, it really makes you wonder, are there others out there like her that we just don't see coming?
Yeah, it's a little unsettling. Okay. But speaking of disappearing acts, let's move on to the Gray Man.
Ah, yes, the associate of Al Capone who vanished with a small fortune back in the 1920s. Poof, just gone.
Like something out of a movie. No trace, no clues.
Yeah.
What do you think happened?
Well, it was a different time, wasn't it? The Roaring Twenties, Prohibition. There was a lot of, shall we say, shadowy activity going on.
And people like Capone and his associates, they were larger-than-life figures.
They represented a challenge to authority, a kind of rebellion against the norms. And vanishing without a trace, that just added to the mystique.
From vanishing acts to, well, selling the Taj Mahal. Multiple times. I mean, come on. Not well, this guy was in a league of his own.
He was a master manipulator. Not
Yeah.
well understood what people desired.
Oh, he knew how to play on people's greed, their desire for a good deal.
Exactly. He'd dangle that opportunity, the chance to own a piece of history, and people would just, overlook those red flags.
And boom, he'd be gone with their money. Talk about audacity.
Yeah, but it also shows how easily we can be fooled, if we let our desires cloud our judgment.
Very true. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about an outlaw who's become, well, almost a folk hero, Jesse James.
The challenge with figures like Jesse James is separating the myth from the reality. He was a violent criminal.
Right, but there's that romanticized image of the outlaw, the Robin Hood figure. It makes it hard to see the full picture sometimes.
We tend to remember the daring robberies, not the victims.
It's a reminder that we have to be careful about glorifying figures from the past.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's move on to a group known for their incredible planning and international reach. The Pink Panthers.
Oh yeah, these guys were like something straight out of a heist movie. Jewel heists across continents, striking with precision and then disappearing.
They were masters of strategy and execution. The Pink Panthers, they really elevated the art of the heist to, I'd say, almost a performance.
And they outwitted some of the most sophisticated security systems. It makes you wonder, were they ever caught?
Some were, but the group as a whole was incredibly elusive. I think that's part of the reason their story continues to fascinate us. So that idea of outsmarting the system, getting away with it.
It's that vicarious thrill, right? But like we said before, even the most meticulously planned crimes, well, they have consequences.
Right, never forget that.
Okay, let's talk about Slick Willie Sutton, a name synonymous with bank robbery.
I rob banks because that's where the money is. Classic.
Straight to the point, no nonsense. But Sutton, he was more than just a robber. He became a cultural figure, famous for his daring escapes. It's like he was playing a game of cat and mouse with the police.
And in a way, he inadvertently helped shape the way banks approach security today. Think about it, all those sophisticated alarms and surveillance systems we have now.
Because of Slick Willie Sutton. Wow. So he was both a product of his time and a force for change. Okay, now prepare to be amazed. Vincenzo Peruggia, the man who stole the Mona Lisa.
It's still one of the most baffling art heists in history.
I mean, how do you steal the Mona Lisa from the Louvre? Seriously.
It's almost too simple, right? Back then, security wasn't what it is today. Perugia, he knew the museum, hid overnight, took the painting, and walked out.
Walked out. just like that.
Yep. And the crazy thing is, the theft actually made the Mona Lisa even more famous.
Ironic, isn't it? He wanted to possess it, and in doing so, he launched it into superstardom.
Exactly. Okay, buckle up for this one. D.B. Cooper, the skyjacker who parachuted into oblivion with a bag full of cash. What do you think happened?
Oh, D.B. Cooper. He is the ultimate mystery. Did he survive? Did he pull off the perfect crime? I have my own theories, of course. It's a case that just grabs you.
The lack of answers, the ambiguity, that's what keeps us coming back to it, trying to piece together the puzzle.
It's the ultimate unsolved crime. Okay, let's move on to a gang that operated in a very different world. The Dalton Gang. These guys were known for their ruthlessness.
They were a product of their time, the Wild West, things were changing, law enforcement was getting more organized.
And they were resisting that change.
Hmm.
Makes you wonder, were they doomed from the start?
I think their story highlights that transition, from the lawlessness of the frontier to a more settled society.
And sometimes those transitions are violent.
Definitely. Okay, our last entry is unique because she wasn't a thief but a victim. Isabel Stewart Gardner.
Ah, yes, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist. Those empty frames, they're so haunting. A constant reminder of what was lost.
It's a powerful example of how theft can be more than just a material loss. It's a violation.
It makes you think about the deeper impact. The emotional toll of having something precious taken from you.
And that desire to possess, that's something we've seen in a lot of the thieves on our list, haven't we? It's a very human thing.
But it's a reminder that while we might be fascinated by these stories, there are always victims.
Right. It's important to remember that.
Well, this has been an incredible start to our deep dive. I mean, we've covered so much already.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, how they each represent like a different approach to, to this idea of theft.
Totally. It's like we're seeing how, I don't know, like the art of being a criminal has evolved.
Yeah.
From just charm to brute force and then all that intricate planning.
And that idea you mentioned earlier about rebellion, it's like a common thread, running through so many of their stories.
Oh, definitely. I mean, whether it's, Doris Payne working her magic on high society or G.B. Cooper hijacking that plane, it's like they're all, I don't know, like they're thumbing their noses at the system.
They're saying, we're not going to play by your rules. We're going to make our own.
It's kind of exciting, right? Like that fantasy of just breaking free from all the constraints. Of course, we're talking about criminals here, so.
Yeah, definitely a dark side to all of that. But it's still a powerful narrative. And it makes you think, as we were talking about how things have evolved, what's next? What's the future of theft going to look like?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, we're already seeing so much cybercrime, right? Hacking and data breaches.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. What if the masterminds of the future, they're not like cat burglars or bank robbers, they're like digital wizards.
Oh, yeah. Manipulating code, stealing fortunes with just a few keystrokes.
It's a whole new world of vulnerability. Our lives are so intertwined with technology.
And the stakes are so much higher now. It's global, it's instant. It's like a whole new game.
And it's one that we all have to be aware of because, we could all become victims in this new landscape.
That's a sobering thought. Okay, well, before we wrap things up completely, let's talk about our final entry. Isabella Stewart Gardner, the victim of, well, one of the most famous art heists ever. It's just, it's heartbreaking.
It really is because, those empty frames, they're not just about the missing paintings. They represent something more.
Oh, I totally agree. It's like a sense of loss, a violation. It goes beyond just the material value of what was stolen.
Like a piece of history was ripped away, and it can never be replaced.
Every time I see pictures of that museum with those empty spaces, it's eerie, It makes you think about the fragility of art, how easily it can be taken.
And that desire to possess, that we were talking about earlier, it can drive people to do some pretty crazy things.
It's a good reminder that behind every act of theft, there's a story and a victim.
A very human story.
Absolutely. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our journey through the lives of these incredible thieves.
It's been quite a ride. We've talked about psychology, we've talked about history, we've talked about the evolution of criminal methods.
It's been fascinating to see all the different ways that people have, challenged the rules, pushed the boundaries, and what it tells us about ourselves.
And hopefully by understanding the past, we can, maybe even prevent some of these crimes in the future.
Well said. But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought. We've talked about these 10 individuals, but their stories are just a tiny piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, think about it. How many other stories are out there? Untold stories of, daring and deception, just waiting to be discovered.
It's kind of exciting, right? That there's always more to learn, more to explore.
Exactly. The journey never ends.
So we've journeyed through the lives of some of history's most cunning thieves. Doris Payne, Nat Wardle, Slick Willie Sutton, the Pink Panthers. It's amazing how they all had such different styles.
It really is, but I think what connects them all is, they understood something about us, about human nature.
Our weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
Like those little cracks in our armor that they could exploit.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it was greed or ambition or maybe just, that thrill of getting away with something, they knew how to push those buttons.
Yeah, you got to hand it to them. Some of their exploits were pretty impressive. I mean, the planning, the execution, it's like almost an art form.
Yeah, there's a reason we're still talking about them, right?
Mm.
There's stories, they capture our imagination.
It's that allure of the forbidden, I guess, like getting a glimpse into a world where the rules don't apply. But of course, we can't forget, these were criminals. Their actions had consequences.
Absolutely. It's a fine line, isn't it?
Mm.
Between admiration and, recognizing the harm they caused.
It's that push and pull that makes these stories so interesting, like they make you think about those gray areas where right and wrong get all mixed up.
And that's what's so great about exploring history, It's not always black and white. It challenges our perspectives, makes us ask those tough questions.
Like what drives someone to become a thief? And how can we protect ourselves from those who might try to exploit us?
By learning from the past, right? Studying their methods, understanding their motives, we can be more aware, more prepared.
Exactly. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey. We've covered so much ground.
From charm to brute force, from meticulous planning to, just sheer luck. We've seen it all. And I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as we have.
And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many other fascinating stories out there just waiting to be uncovered.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and until next time, keep diving deep.